false estimates to justify White House policy. Accused of ignoring signs of the Soviet collapse, and he may be the next head of the CIA. Now he's facing the senators who will determine his future. Tonight, the mystery that is Robert Gates.
This is ABC News Nightline. Substituting for Ted Koppel and reporting from Washington, Chris Wallace.
After months of charges and denials, the most important moment on this first day of the Gates confirmation hearings may have come early on, when the president's nominee to head the CIA, in effect, apologized to the Senate committee. Robert Gates said he made misjudgments during the Iran-Contra scandal, that he could have and probably should have acted more aggressively to find out exactly what the CIA had been up to. In the absence of a smoking gun that proves Gates lied about his role in the scandal, this act of contrition seemed to take some of the sting out of his Senate critics. Iran-Contra is not the only hurdle standing between Gates and the top job at the CIA. There are charges that as a CIA official, he tailored intelligence analysis to back up White House policies. There is also criticism that Gates has been wrong about developments around the world, especially the drive to reform in the Soviet Union. But on this first day of the hearings, the central issue was Iran-Contra. As Nightline's Jeff Greenfield reports now, it's a subject that still obsesses the nation's capital 5 years after the fact.
Colonel North, please rise.
There were ghosts in the Washington air today.
For 5 years, my family and I have been under fire.
Nearly 5 years after the Iran-Contra scandal shook this town to its roots, Colonel Oliver North, a central figure in that story, left the U.S. District Courthouse a free man.
Totally exonerated, fully, completely. I don't have another word for it.
And a few blocks away in a Senate hearing room, Robert Gates, the man the president wants as Director of Central Intelligence, wrestled with Iran-Contra, the issue that had cost him that job 4.5 years ago.
But today, I want to speak about the misjudgments that I made and the lessons I learned.
Even before the questions began, Gates tried to defuse the issue by eating a large dose of humble pie.
I should have been more skeptical about what I was told. I should have asked more questions.
Ever since the 47-year-old career intelligence analyst was nominated last May by President Bush, the Iran-Contra ghost has been seen as the big threat to his confirmation. The lingering skepticism about what Gates knew as the number 2 man in the CIA under William Casey was evident today in some of the opening statements.
You were absolutely surrounded by the truth. Question is, how could you possibly not know?
It is Mr. Gates' memory loss that has this senator concerned, meetings, briefings, conversations that led to some of the delay.
It was exactly this issue that Committee Chairman David Boren probed during the first round of questions. Did Gates remember being told of the diversion of funds to the Contras by a top CIA official?
Do you have any recollection of Mr. Kurz discussing the diversion with you prior to your meeting with Charlie Allen when he discussed it with you on October 1st, 1986?
No, sir, I do not.
Did he help prepare William Casey's misleading congressional testimony?
Mr. Chairman, that part of the testimony was completed after I had gone home, and frankly, in all of the disputes and telephone calls of that Thursday evening and late into the night, I guess I was considered sufficiently on the periphery. No one ever called me about it at all.
For Republican Vice Chairman Frank Murkowski, the opening round was a chance to strengthen Gates's claim that Casey often kept him uninformed.
He did not work through much of his career in a bureaucratic structure, although he had several senior government positions in the State Department and the SEC. But his basic inclination was to operate pretty much on his own.
It was also a chance for Gates to aim some pointed criticism of his late boss's operating manner.
It was something of an adventure to work for him because he would pick up the phone and punch a button without much concern for who was at the other end of the line and start shouting instructions.
And Murkowski invited Gates to refute charges that he was involved in the so-called October surprise. the alleged effort by the 1980 Reagan-Bush campaign to delay the release of Iranian hostages.
Were you in Paris at any time during October of 1980 for any reason?
No, sir.
Gates also flatly denied charges, aired among other places on Nightline, that he helped funnel arms and technology to Iraq during the 1980s.
Dr. Gates, have you ever been aware of any CIA or U.S. government covert operation to supply arms to Iraq?
No, sir.
In an unusually sharp opening statement, Senator Bill Bradley raised doubts about Gates on other issues. For instance, his pessimistic view of Soviet reforms.
There's no question that Mr. Gates got it wrong. The question is, why? The committee has to decide whether such mistakes were truly impartial errors of judgment or the result of systematic biases to support the bloated defense budgets of the 1980s.
And Bradley questioned Gates's role in the tilt of U.S. policy toward Iraq in the late 1980s.
Indeed, unless all his activities in this regard were authorized under law, I would seriously question his candor and commitment to upholding the law and therefore his fitness to serve.
Bradley also raised the issue of whether Gates had cooked the books, shaped intelligence analysis to fit the policies of the administrations he served. Several former CIA officials have made such charges. Officials like John Gentry, whose angry resignation from the CIA last year accused Gates of creating a climate of intellectual dishonesty. Gates was asked about that today.
If you're a young analyst or a junior analyst and your work comes back and it's got criticisms written all over it, it's a lot easier to assume that the people on the 7th floor rejected it because it was politically motivated, or their rejection was politically motivated, than perhaps their work didn't meet the standard required.
There was good news for Gates from today's committee session. All of the committee Republicans indicated their strong inclination to support him. As of now, Senator Bradley appears to be Gates's strongest critic, along with Senator Metzenbaum, whose questioning in a late-night session Monday evening left little doubt where he stands.
The question I have is, how could you tell this committee that you and the CIA were unequivocally supportive of congressional oversight of intelligence activities at the exact moment in time when you were helping to conceal from Congress an operation which was contrary to the stated policies of this country?
Senator, I meant what I said in that testimony, and all I can tell you is that at that time I, along with all others in CIA, were under a presidential edict in that finding not to brief the Congress.
Without question, the Iran-Contra story dominated today's session, something like a hit song from another time, stirring old emotions. But the real dimensions of Robert Gates's campaign to become Director of Central Intelligence may not emerge until later in the week, when his critics try to make the case that Gates has not been honest about intelligence or about his own behavior. I'm Jeff Greenfield for Nightline in Washington.
And when we come back, we'll be joined by Senator Howard Metzenbaum, Democratic member of the Intelligence Committee, who has been one of Gates's sharpest critics, by former CIA analyst John Gentry, who says Gates was partly responsible for slanting intelligence reports, and by Condoleezza Rice, who worked closely with Gates at the National Security Council.
This is ABC News Nightline, brought to you by AT&T.
Time after time, vintage clothing of Hollywood. Are you saving what you'd hoped since leaving AT&T? Claremont Riding Academy of New York. Are you waiting longer for calls to connect? We want you back. AT&T Pro Watts. A discount plan with very competitive prices. Switch now and get 1 month of long distance free. We want you back. Call 1-800-222-0400.
For my family, Tartar Control Aqua Fresh fights tartar and makes you feel this fresh.
Tartar Control Aqua Fresh helps remove plaque and makes you feel this fresh.
Tartar Control Aqua Fresh fights cavities
and makes you feel this fresh.
Only Tartar Control Aqua Fresh is the fresh way to fight cavities, fight plaque, and fight tartar, all with one great Aqua Fresh taste.
Tartar Control Aqua Fresh.
It fights tartar
and makes you feel this fresh.
Estee Lauder. Premiering exclusively at Nordstrom.
Say hello to news, sports, and entertainment on Paragon Cable. Plus, order Paragon Cable with exciting HBO and get 100 minutes of free long distance from U.S. Sprint. For details, call Paragon Cable now. Get connected.
Beaten, raped, women pushed to the edge, fight back in the face of violence.
Lessons from those who survived the nightmare. A special 2020, Tuesday.
Joining us now from our Washington studios are Democratic Senator Howard Metzenbaum, a member of the Intelligence Committee, former CIA analyst John Gentry, who spent 12 years at the agency specializing in Eastern Europe, and from our affiliate KOVR in Sacramento, Stanford University professor Condoleezza Rice, former senior director of Soviet affairs for the National Security Council. She is now a consultant for ABC News. Senator Metzenbaum, you were questioning Mr. Gates when the session broke up for the evening. I don't know what ammunition you've still got out there, but my guess would be at the White House tonight they're saying you really haven't shaken Mr. Gates so far. Are you getting frustrated by this?
No, I'm not getting frustrated because I think tomorrow will come on a bit stronger. The real question is, how could this man, who was second in command at the CIA, Casey knew what was going on in the Iran-Contra affair, and as far as the sale of arms to the Iranians and use of the money for the Contras, two people under Mr. Gates knew what was going on. Mr. Gates says he doesn't know. Mr. Gates had a responsibility to help Casey with his testimony to Congress. He somehow says, well, he was there at the beginning, but then he wasn't able to be there when the balance of the work was done. And when Casey totally omitted certain major points to the committee, almost a deliberate lie. I mean, it's a lie by omission. He says he didn't see that testimony. He didn't read it afterwards. Time after time, Mr. Gates indicates that he knew less about what was going on than a man in his position should have known. To a committee questionnaire, he said, answered 33 times, he didn't recollect the answer. And to 40 of the questions, he said he didn't know the answer. A man in his position either knew or should have known, and some of his answers, frankly, are just not credible as I see it.
Well, you say not credible. I mean, you're tiptoeing right up to that line. Let me ask you, do you feel on the basis of this first day and on his written responses to questions before today's hearing that Mr. Gates is lying to this committee?
I wouldn't say that he's lying, but I'd say that he's maybe not sharing all of the facts with us. I don't think that he's telling us everything he knows. I think his memory is too convenient, and I think that, but I'm frank to say to you, I think he's going to be confirmed because a solid block of Republicans walked into the hearing prepared to vote for him come hell or high water. And so I think that under those circumstances, in all probability, he will be confirmed. That doesn't necessarily mean he should be confirmed.
Let me bring in Ms. Rice here because she did work for 2 years on the National Security Council with Mr. Gates. You know, Ms. Rice, that Mr. Gates is almost legendary for his memory, his ability to recollect facts. Are you a little bit surprised by all the things he's saying he doesn't recall about the Iran-Contra scandal and his involvement in it?
No, I, of course, don't know very much about the operations of the CIA under William Casey. I was a Stanford professor at the time. But I can say this, I think that Bob Gates is a man of tremendous integrity, and I can understand perhaps how through compartmentalization something like this can happen. I absolutely never experienced a circumstance in which Bob Gates was anything less than candid.
Mr. Gentry, let me bring you in. You did work at the CIA. What about this talk of compartmentalization? Is it really possible that the number 1 and the number 3 men may have known what was going on with Iran-Contra, but the number 2 man, especially a man of Gates' ability, would not have known what was going on?
Well, it's hard for most CIA people to believe that, given Mr. Gates' tremendous energy and propensity to know most everything about him.
Ms. Rice, how would you respond to the senator's charge that there's a kind of willful ignorance going on here on Mr. Gates' part?
Well, again, I'm not capable, really, of discussing the Iran-Contra affair. I was not party to it. I was not in the government at the time. I can only say that from my own experiences with Bob Gates, which were considerable, this is a man that I saw 2, 3, 4 times a day on some of the most sensitive issues concerning U.S.-Soviet relations, Soviet policy, Eastern Europe, Germany. And I can say that I saw a man who was absolutely candid with his bosses, candid with his subordinates, and it's very difficult for me to believe that he would be anything less than candid with the Senate.
Is that the way the game is played, though, sometimes in national security affairs? You just don't ask questions in areas where it might be touchy for you to find out the information, that there was this kind of willful ignoring of the facts?
Well, I think that I understand that Bob Gates said today that he wishes he'd asked other questions. I'm sure that we all wish we'd asked other questions at given times. But you must understand that in the national security arena, things do get compartmented. People do get cut out, and perhaps that's what happened. But I can only go by my experiences with Bob Gates, and this is a man of tremendous integrity. As a matter of fact, someone who, despite a lot of slings and arrows that were thrown at him, continued to say exactly what he thought about what was going on in the Soviet Union, said so forcefully, and I think said so with great candor and straightforwardness.
Well, Ms. Rice, as you well know, that's one of the main charges that's being made against Mr. Gates at these hearings, that over the course of his time at the CIA, he slanted intelligence analysis. And when we return, I want to ask you all about that allegation. And we'll continue our discussion in a moment.
You know what I like best about going on vacation? Eating out. So on this vacation, I'm dining my way from San Juan to St. Thomas, from Guadalupe to Caracas, from Cozumel to Grand Cayman. It's all included in the price. But what I really like about this vacation is that my favorite restaurant goes everywhere I go. Take a 3, 4, or 7-day fun ship vacation on Carnival, the most popular cruise line in the world.
I'm alive, Jeff Hashimoto.
I'm alive, Vonda Williamson.
I'm alive, Sonia Schofield.
I'm alive, Howard Weber.
Want to get more out of life?
I'm alive, Jessica Weber.
Get airbags. See your Allstate agent for a list of cars with airbags.
We're alive.
Say hello to news, sports, and entertainment on Paragon Cable. Plus, order Paragon Cable with exciting HBO and get 100 minutes of free long distance from U.S. Sprint. For details, call Paragon Cable now. Get connected.
Where did they get the money to do that?
Where did they get the money to buy that?
Due to technical difficulties, we're unable to bring you our regularly scheduled commercial. It seems our video engineer heard about Subaru Super Savings Days and just took off. Oh, he did leave this brochure. Seems he couldn't pass up $1,200 customer cash back on any 2- or 4-wheel drive Subaru Legacy. Not to mention the $902 he saved with an ABS Value Plus package. That's over $2,100. $2,100?
He holds the cards in the Middle East.
In your heart, do you want to see Israel destroyed?
Syria's President Assad with Diane Sawyer on Primetime Thursday.
It could have been deadly competition tomorrow, the intended victim of the bizarre cheerleader trial.
Plus an interview with former President Jimmy Carter on Good Morning America tomorrow.
Continuing our discussion now on the Gates hearings, Mr. Gentry, it didn't come up much today, but one of the issues that Mr. Gates is going to have to deal with during the rest of these confirmation hearings is the allegation that he slanted intelligence analysis while he was at the CIA to back up White House policy. You felt so strongly about this that you, in fact, quit the CIA. Tell us about Gates's involvement in this slanting process.
Well, a series of conversations with a number of former CIA people indicate a series of politicization issues that run through the entire institution. For example, Mr. Gates apparently was involved in politicizing estimates on Iran, on papal assassination estimate. He...
Explain the papal assassination. What are you saying, that he somehow misled or did not give an accurate assessment of what CIA intelligence was for political purposes?
He injected opinions that were at odds with the assessments of the professional intelligence officers underneath him.
And why?
Well, that's not clear. But he did some other things, too, according to these folks. He suppressed other assessments on the Soviet Union, messages from the Office of Soviet Analysis, for example, that the Soviet Union was retrenching from the Third World, that it was less than fully involved in terrorism, for example. Other allegations concern his role as chairman of the National Intelligence Council, where he altered the procedures whereby estimates were coordinated throughout the intelligence community.
And Mr. Gentry, was the point of this to push a hard line against the Soviets, which of course would find favor in the Reagan White House?
Well, only Mr. Gates can answer that entirely, of course, but it seemed clear to many of us that a purpose of this was to satisfy a political constituent of some sort.
Ms. Rice, let me ask you about that. You've just finished saying that at the NSC, Mr. Gates was interested in finding out the truth, not in making political arguments. How do you respond to Mr. Gentry?
Well, I, again, don't know the specifics of what Mr. Gentry's talking about, but I can tell you that when intelligence estimates are done, they are matters of judgment. It is very rare that one has incontrovertible evidence in one direction or another. It is usually a matter of adding up disparate pieces of evidence to come up with a story. And I myself have often seen unvarnished estimates from the agency that I thought leaned very far in one direction or another. I might add that during the time that Bob Gates was at the CIA, I was an academic, and I can remember that many of us thought CIA estimates of Soviet military spending were actually quite low. And if one looks at the Soviets' own reassessment process, in fact, the Soviets say that they were spending more on military budgets than the CIA said that they were at the time. So I think that there are plenty of examples to the contrary, and I would just make the point that one has to take estimates, examine them, weigh the evidence, and certainly senior people in the agency have to make judgments as to whether or not they think the estimates are correct.
Senator Metzenbaum, let me ask you about another issue that seems likely to come up in these hearings, and that is just how good Gates's judgment is. Some critics are saying that he's been wrong repeatedly about the Soviet Union, overestimating Soviet military strength, underestimating the reform movement there. What kind of a grade do you give Mr. Gates in his judgment over the last decade?
Well, one of the arguments for Mr. Gates's confirmation is that he's an expert on the Soviet Union. That doesn't hold very much weight in view of the fact that he did indicate the Soviet Union was far stronger than they appear to be. They didn't give us any indication that there would be this disintegration and the breakup of the Soviet Union. And furthermore, if he were an expert on the Soviet Union, since there isn't a Soviet Union anymore, that's hardly an argument for his confirmation. I think the evidence seems to be pretty clear that he did overestimate the strength and the economic power as well as the military power of the Soviet Union.
You know, Senator, you said earlier in the first segment that as far as you're concerned, it's almost a foregone conclusion that Gates is going to be confirmed. Are you in effect saying that whatever information you've gotten from witnesses, whatever information your staff has been able to dig up, it isn't going to be enough to derail Mr. Gates?
I'm saying to you, unless you found a smoking gun, some terrible situation, I think every Republican on that committee is prepared to vote for him. And there doesn't seem to be much doubt that several Democrats have already made up their mind as well. So I would say to you that I think there is a more than even chance that he will be confirmed. But in my opinion, I think those of us who have some reservations have a responsibility to elicit as much of the facts as we possibly can.
But what you're also saying is that after months of investigation, your committee has not come up with that smoking gun.
What I'm also saying, yes, that is true. We have not come up with the smoking gun. We've come up with the guns, but we haven't come up with the smoking gun. But the fact is that the president has made it very clear that this is a political appointment, that he wants it to go through, not that he's paying a political debt, and I'm not suggesting that, but that the entire prestige and pressure of the White House is behind this appointment, and that means that many members on his side of the aisle are going to go along with him, so that you have a running start. You don't always have that situation when the president sends up a nominee.
Very briefly, and we have less than 30 seconds left, is there something you'd like to accomplish in terms of getting commitments from Mr. Gates as to future action?
Yes, the commitment that I want is that if he knows of wrongdoing or illegality in the government, that he will bring those matters to the attention of Congress, regardless of whether he's told not to do so by the president or any higher up in the government, that he will level with the Congress and keep us informed. I think that's the most that we can expect of him.
Senator Metzenbaum, Ms. Rice, Mr. Gentry, I want to thank you all very much for joining us. It sounds, despite what the fact that this is the first day of the hearings, as if the final conclusion may already have been decided. Thank you again. And we'll be back in a moment with a final note.
This can't be my new apartment.
Good thing I brought Lysol Pine Action. They've made it better. Now it cleans with hospital-type disinfection, the strongest you can buy.
Now it's starting to feel like home.
Improved Lysol Pine Action.